The ocean was a world of quiet darkness, stretching deeper than anyone on the research station had ever dared to explore. The station floated above a remote plateau, far from the familiar coastlines of human civilization. It was a fortress of human curiosity, a place where technology met courage, and where the unknown was nothing but an invitation. Inside, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, their lives bound by a shared purpose: to understand the depths that had always been beyond reach. Mira sat at her console, her eyes fixed on the streams of data scrolling across the monitors. She was young but brilliant, an engineer who loved the hum of machinery and the way signals could tell stories if only someone listened closely. Tonight, she had volunteered for the midnight watch, a time when the station felt emptily vast, the only sounds coming from the whir of computers and the occasional distant rumble of underwater currents. Most of the crew preferred to sleep through these hours, but Mira liked the solitude. In the stillness, the ocean seemed almost alive, whispering secrets that no one else could hear. The sonar screen flickered, displaying the usual sweep of echoes that bounced off the ocean floor. Mira adjusted the sensitivity, her fingers moving swiftly over the controls. That's when she noticed it, a faint pulse, irregular, almost like a heartbeat. At first, she thought it was an artifact, a glitch in the system. She checked the calibration, ran diagnostics, and even restarted the sonar feed. But the pulse remained, steady and deliberate. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. It was calling out. Mira frowned, her heart quickening. She tapped the microphone. "Control, this is Mira. Do you see this on the sonar?" A sleepy voice crackled back. "You mean the blip near the edge of Sector 9? Probably just an old wreck. Nothing to worry about." Mira shook her head. "It's not stationary. It's moving, but very slowly. And it's pulsing. I've never seen anything like it." There was a pause, followed by a sigh. "Be careful, Mira. You know we can't just chase every anomaly in the deep." "I know," she said softly, her eyes glued to the flickering light on the screen. "But I have a feeling about this one." By the time the rest of the crew began to stir for their own shifts, Mira had already run preliminary scans. The pulse was faint, almost musical in its rhythm, but there was an intelligence to it, an order. It reminded her of the stories her grandfather used to tell about the explorers who first crossed the seas. Those adventurers had nothing but courage and curiosity, and Mira felt the same fire now. The station commander, an older man named Harlan, appeared in the doorway. His hair was silver, and his eyes carried the calm authority of someone who had faced countless dangers. "Mira, what's going on? Why are the alarms off the charts?" Mira pointed to the sonar. "There's something down there. I don't know what it is, but it's pulsing. It's like it's alive." Harlan studied the screen carefully, his brow furrowed. "Alive, or pretending to be. The deep plays tricks on you, Mira. Currents, magnetic fields, even old wrecks can create signals that seem alive. But look at this pattern," Mira insisted. "It's not random. It repeats, and the intervals are almost too perfect. I've never seen a wreck send signals like this." Harlan hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right. Prepare a submersible. Unmanned. We'll see what we're dealing with before risking anyone's life." The announcement brought a flurry of activity to the station. Engineers checked the submersible's thrusters and sensors. Scientists recalibrated recording devices. And Mira worked tirelessly to optimize the sonar feed. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, a quiet tension settled over the crew. Everyone felt it, the sense that something extraordinary was waiting in the darkness below. The submersible was sleek, a small marvel of human engineering designed to withstand pressures that could crush steel like paper. Mira watched as it descended, the live feed showing the murky blue of the deep, a world few humans had ever seen. Shadows danced across the screen, elongated shapes of rocks, the swaying of deep-sea plants, and occasional flashes of phosphorescent life. Then, at the edge of the plateau, the pulse appeared again. This time, it was larger, clearer, and more insistent. The submersible's lights illuminated the water ahead, revealing the first hint of something massive, a shape that did not belong to any natural formation. It was curved, metallic, partially buried in sediment, and covered in strange, glowing growths. Mira held her breath. "Sonar is picking it up loud and clear," she whispered. "It's huge. And it's sending something." The crew leaned over her shoulders, eyes wide. Harlan's face was unreadable, but his hand rested lightly on the console as if to steady himself. "That's no ordinary wreck," he admitted. Mira's fingers flew across the controls. She increased the submersible's sonar resolution, trying to capture every detail. The pulses grew more complex, like a language waiting to be understood. Mira felt a thrill of excitement mixed with unease. It was as if the ship itself was aware of them, aware that humans had come to listen. Hours passed with slow, careful observation. The submersible mapped the contours of the ship, revealing its immense size and unusual construction. It looked ancient, yet sophisticated, with designs that hinted at knowledge beyond anything currently documented in human history. The glowing growths along its hull pulsed gently, in rhythm with the sonar echoes. "This is incredible," said one of the scientists, a woman named Lena. "I've studied every wreck we've found, and this is something else entirely." Harlan nodded, though concern shadowed his face. "Be careful. The deep hides dangers we can't even imagine." Mira felt a shiver of anticipation. They had stumbled upon something remarkable, something that could change humanity's understanding of the ocean, and perhaps even history itself. But along with the excitement came the awareness that they were far from safe. The deep had a way of humbling even the bravest explorers. As the night wore on, the pulse seemed to respond to their presence, shifting in rhythm, almost as if it were trying to communicate. Mira leaned closer to the console, tracing the patterns with her fingers. She had an idea, a faint hope that this was not just a signal, but a message. "Commander," she said quietly, "I think it's trying to tell us something. We just have to figure out how to listen." Harlan studied her face, then the sonar screen. After a long pause, he nodded. "We proceed carefully. No risks to personnel until we understand it better. But yes, we listen. We learn." The station settled into a quiet focus, the crew united by a shared purpose. Outside, the ocean pressed in on all sides, a vast, unknowable expanse, and beneath them, the ship waited, whispering through the sonar, a voice from the deep that had been silent for decades, perhaps centuries, finally reaching out to human ears. Mira stayed at her console long after most of the crew had drifted off to sleep, studying the echoes, tracing patterns, and imagining the stories the ship might tell. She thought of the explorers of the past, the ones who had crossed unknown seas guided only by instinct and courage. Now, in the silent darkness of the ocean, she felt their spirit alive in herself and her team. Hours passed. The midnight hour stretched into the early morning, and the pulse continued without pause. It was both comforting and unnerving, a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Mira wondered what had sent it, and why it had waited so long to be heard. By dawn, preliminary analysis showed something extraordinary. The signals contained structured information, patterns that could potentially be decoded. Mira shared the findings with the team, their eyes lighting up with excitement and curiosity. The thought of unraveling a message from a sunken vessel filled them with energy. Harlan addressed the crew. "This is just the beginning. What lies ahead is unknown. But it is our nature as humans to explore, to seek knowledge. We'll approach this carefully, but we will not turn back from what could be one of the greatest discoveries of our time." Mira smiled faintly, a sense of pride and anticipation swelling in her chest. They were standing at the threshold of the unknown, guided by nothing but their courage, curiosity, and the strange whispers of a shipwreck that had waited decades to speak. As the sun rose above the horizon, casting faint light across the station, Mira returned to her console. The ocean beyond was vast, dark, and full of mysteries. But for the first time, she felt a connection to it. The shipwreck's voice continued to pulse in the depths, a quiet reminder that humans were never truly alone in their quest to explore. Somewhere down there, in the silent abyss, the past waited, and humanity was listening. The deep sea was alive in ways the crew of the station could hardly comprehend. Its darkness was not empty. It was full of pressure, currents, and creatures that glowed like stars in the abyss. Mira sat at the console again, her eyes fixed on the sonar feed. The pulse from the sunken ship had grown stronger, as if it recognized their presence. Each rhythmic beat seemed to invite them closer, yet warned them at the same time. There was intelligence here, a pattern that called for careful attention. The station commander, Harlan, and the senior scientists gathered around Mira's console, studying the data. "The pulse seems to repeat in cycles," said Lena, the lead oceanographer. "It's almost like a heartbeat, but with variations. As if it's a language waiting to be understood." Mira nodded. "I've run preliminary analysis. It's definitely structured. There's repetition, but also variation. As if someone or something is trying to communicate." Harlan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "A ship sending signals from the depths is not unusual. But the regularity you're describing, it's unprecedented. It's almost as if the wreck is alive. Or it contains something alive," suggested Dr. Kamal, the station's physicist. "Some automated intelligence, or a preserved system. Think about it. If this ship is centuries old, maybe it had technology we haven't even imagined." Mira felt a thrill. The possibility of discovering lost human knowledge, or something more extraordinary, made her pulse quicken. She remembered her grandfather's tales of explorers who risked everything for discovery. Tonight, in the silence of the ocean, she felt that same spirit guiding her hands. After hours of discussion, the team agreed on a plan. They would send the submersible closer, this time with enhanced sensors and a recording device capable of capturing every signal. It would be unmanned. No one would risk going down until they knew more. Mira worked tirelessly with the engineers to prepare it, calibrating instruments and testing the propulsion systems. Every detail mattered. The pressures at these depths were enormous, and even a minor miscalculation could crush the submersible instantly. Finally, the vehicle descended into the blue-black darkness. Its lights cut through the water in long, thin beams, revealing strange silhouettes of the deep-sea terrain. Rocks, ridges, and currents moved in ways that seemed alive, shifting unpredictably. Then, almost suddenly, the shipwreck came into view. It was enormous. The hull rose like a shadowed mountain from the ocean floor, covered in luminescent growths that pulsed faintly. The ship's structure was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, smooth and curved in some places, sharply angled in others, with unusual markings etched into its metal. It was as if someone had designed it with a combination of artistry and function that humans had only just begun to imagine. "Look at the size of it," whispered Lena. "I've never seen anything like this. It's monumental." The submersible's sonar detected something new. A series of rhythmic pulses embedded in the wreck's structure. More complex than before. Mira's fingers flew across the controls, recording, analyzing, and translating the signals into a visual pattern. The crew watched in awe as a seemingly incomprehensible series of pulses began to form shapes and sequences on their monitors. "It's a message," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not random. Whoever or whatever built this ship wanted to communicate." Harlan leaned closer, studying the screen. "We need to be careful. The deep sea is full of unknowns. But we cannot ignore this. This could be humanity's most important discovery in centuries." As the submersible moved closer to the wreck, strange anomalies began to appear. Magnetic fields fluctuated, causing the instruments to misread data. Tiny currents twisted around the vessel as if the water itself were resisting their approach. Mira adjusted the sensors, filtering out noise, and the pulses sharpened, forming distinct sequences that seemed almost deliberate. Hours passed in tense observation. The crew traced the outlines of compartments within the ship, discovering areas that had been perfectly preserved by the cold, pressurized environment. Some compartments appeared to contain machinery of unknown design, while others hinted at storage spaces. The strange luminescent growths covered portions of the hull, almost like protective armor. Then came the first extraordinary discovery. A compartment at the rear of the ship seemed to contain a preserved human figure. The submersible's lights illuminated the space, revealing the faint outline of a person seated, almost in meditation, surrounded by machinery. "Is it alive?" someone asked, fear and awe mixing in their voice. Mira studied the sonar feed and the visual images. "I don't know. It could be an automated preservation system. Whatever it is, it has maintained this person or figure for centuries." Lena shivered. "It's like a message in itself. Someone wanted to be remembered. Someone wanted to reach out to the future." Harlan nodded, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. "This is what exploration is about. Understanding. Discovery. Not fear." The crew worked through the night, carefully recording every detail, decoding the sonar signals, and mapping the ship. Mira realized that the pulses were not just random sounds. They were structured in a way that hinted at information storage. Each pattern could represent a coordinate, a message, or even instructions for understanding the ship itself. "What if it's a manual?" Mira asked quietly. "A guide left by the builders? For anyone who might find it?" Dr. Kamal considered this. "If the ship contains advanced knowledge, then yes. The patterns could be a way of preserving information without relying on conventional storage. Sonar waves as a language, it's brilliant." As the team theorized, the submersible explored further compartments. Each section revealed more mysteries. Strange devices that hummed faintly, cables that glowed like veins, and etched symbols that defied immediate interpretation. The wreck was not just a relic. It was a library. A preserved capsule of human, or perhaps post-human achievement. Yet the deeper the submersible went, the more the wreck seemed to react. Subtle vibrations shook the station through the ocean floor. Currents intensified, making it difficult for the submersible to maintain a steady position. Mira's hands were steady, but her heart raced. They were touching something that had been undisturbed for centuries, and it was alive with the memory of its creators. Suddenly, the sonar pulses shifted. A long, steady tone replaced the shorter, patterned blips. It was different, urgent. Almost like a warning, Mira's fingers flew over the console, trying to interpret the change. The rest of the crew leaned in, holding their breath. "Commander," Mira said, "the ship is responding to us. The signals have changed. It's alive in some way. Or at least aware of our presence." Harlan's expression was calm but tense. "Proceed carefully. We are guests here. Treat it with respect." Mira nodded. The team adjusted the submersible's position and sent out a series of encoded pulses, a simple pattern designed to indicate their peaceful intentions. Almost immediately, the sonar responded with a mirrored sequence, like an acknowledgement. Lena gasped. "It's communicating with us. Not words, but patterns. It's alive in its own way." Hours passed as they continued the delicate interaction. The submersible mapped the internal structure, while Mira and her team deciphered the sonar sequences. Slowly, they began to recognize a logic behind the pulses, a rudimentary language that hinted at instructions, coordinates, and perhaps even a history of the ship's journey. The sunken vessel was revealing itself piece by piece. Each discovery was more incredible than the last. A room containing preserved tools and instruments, another with what appeared to be records etched into metallic plates. And finally, a chamber at the center of the ship that pulsed with a faint internal light. "This must be the core," Mira whispered. "The heart of the ship." The submersible approached cautiously. The pulses grew stronger, more intense, as if the ship itself were watching. Mira's hands moved over the console, adjusting frequencies, stabilizing the feed, and then, for a brief moment, the ship seemed to speak more clearly than ever. The pulses forming a sequence that made sense in the simplest terms. Recognition and invitation. "It knows we are here. It acknowledges us," Mira said. "It's inviting us to learn." Harlan looked at her, a rare smile crossing his face. This is what humanity was made for: to explore, to understand, to connect with the unknown. And we are answering that call. As the night turned into early morning, the team felt a profound sense of connection to the vessel. It was as if the wreck had been waiting for someone to arrive, for human curiosity to reach the depths. They were not just discovering a ship. They were engaging with the memory of a civilization, the ingenuity of a mind that had left its mark in the dark waters. Mira leaned back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. The submersible hovered near the core, its lights revealing intricate patterns on the walls. The sonar pulses continued, steady and deliberate, forming a language that promised knowledge and insight. The crew knew this was only the beginning. The ocean outside remained silent and infinite. But inside the station, human determination burned brighter than ever. They had found the first whisper of the shipwreck's secrets. They had proven that curiosity, intelligence, and courage, the essence of humanity, could reach even the darkest depths. And somewhere in the deep, the ship waited, its voice a pulse in the water, inviting them to unlock the rest of its story. The ocean outside the station was silent. But inside, the atmosphere felt electric. Everyone sensed they were standing on the edge of something important. The strange shipwreck in the deep had begun responding to their sonar, and every new signal felt like a step into a larger mystery. Mira barely slept after the second night. Her thoughts were filled with the patterns, the pulses, and the strange invitation the ship seemed to send. Morning on the station did not bring sunlight, only a shift in routine. Crew members moved with renewed energy, gathering around screens and sharing theories. The preserved figure inside the ship had become the center of their discussions, but so had the chamber that pulsed with faint light. There was something inside that chamber, something powerful enough to still be active after centuries lost beneath crushing pressure. Mira returned to her console with determination. The sonar feed flickered steadily, the patterns sinking into familiar rhythms she had studied for hours. The ship seemed patient, waiting for their next move. She began decoding the pulses using the improved software they had created overnight. The program translated the rhythms into graphical sequences, shapes, lines, and spirals that repeated with mathematical precision. "These aren't just signals," Mira said as her teammates leaned over her shoulder. "They're instructions. They're designed for anyone who finds the ship." Lena nodded thoughtfully. "It's like the ship left behind its own language, and we're finally beginning to understand it." Harlan entered the room with a serious expression. "All right, team. We've studied the signals from the outside. It's time to move deeper. There are chambers the first submersible didn't reach. We need to send it into the core." The decision filled the room with silence. The core chamber had pulsed a warm light even after all this time. It held answers, but also danger. Automated systems could still be active. Structural instability could trap the submersible. But the team knew they could not ignore the core any longer. They began preparing the submersible again, upgrading sensors and attaching an emergency retrieval cable. Mira stayed close, checking every detail twice. She felt responsible not because she discovered the signal first, but because she felt connected to it. The patterns seemed to speak directly to her, pulling her deeper into the mystery. When the submersible descended once more, the crew gathered in the control room. The live feed showed familiar sights: dark cliffs, glowing plants, and the massive curve of the ship. As it approached the wreck, the pulse grew louder through the speakers, steady like a heartbeat. Mira controlled the submersible with careful movements. The feed showed the entrance to the ship, a wide opening partially collapsed but still navigable. The vehicle slipped inside, its lights illuminating the interior. Metallic walls rose, smooth and curved, covered in etched symbols and strange growths that shimmered faintly. "Look at those designs," Lena whispered. "It's like a mix of art and engineering." The symbols didn't look like any known language. Some resembled spirals, others straight lines intersecting at perfect angles. Mira noticed that many of these shapes matched the sonar patterns they had decoded. The ship was speaking through every surface. The submersible moved deeper, entering a long corridor that sloped down gently. The pulse changed a little, becoming slower and more rhythmic. It was almost calming. Mira felt as if the ship were guiding them, showing them the path to follow. They passed compartments filled with preserved objects, tools, containers, even what looked like personal items. Some had remained untouched despite the crushing pressure outside. It was as if the ship had been built to withstand anything. Finally, they reached the central chamber. It was larger than anything they had seen so far, an open circular space with a glowing column at its center. The soft light flickered like breath. The entire chamber hummed with a faint vibration that made the viewing screens tremble slightly. "Is that an energy core?" Dr. Kamal murmured. "How is it still functioning?" Mira zoomed in. The core was covered in lines, thin channels that glowed faintly, connecting it to the chamber walls. The light pulsed in perfect time with the sonar signals, as if the chamber itself was alive and communicating through a heartbeat. But something else caught her eye. There was a smaller structure beside the core, shaped like a sealed capsule. It was metallic, smooth, and tightly closed, and it pulsed with a separate rhythm, slower and deeper. "What's inside that?" Lena asked. Mira shook her head. "I don't know. But it's important. The ship wants us to see it." As she steered the submersible closer, the sonar suddenly changed. The pulses grew louder and more complex, forming a rapid sequence that almost sounded like a warning. The lights in the chamber flickered. The entire ship seemed to tremble. "What's happening?" someone asked nervously. Mira steadied the submersible. "I think the ship is reacting to us. Maybe it's protecting something." Harlan stepped forward, eyes sharp. "Back the submersible up a little. Let's show we're not a threat." Mira obeyed, pulling the submersible a few meters away. Instantly, the pulses softened again, returning to the steady rhythm they recognized. "It's aware," Dr. Kamal whispered. "It's not alive in the biological sense, but it's aware. It senses intentions, or at least movement." They watched as the chamber's lights stabilized. Mira's heart pounded with excitement. This was no ordinary ship. This was a piece of intelligent engineering, a guardian of knowledge left behind for a future it could not predict. After several long minutes, the sonar pulses shifted again. This time, the pattern was slow and clear. Mira recognized it. It was the same invitation signal they had seen earlier. "It wants us to interact with the capsule," she said softly. Harlan hesitated. "We can't risk opening it." "Not yet. But we can scan it." Mira ran advanced scans. The results shocked everyone. Inside the capsule was a preserved human figure similar to the one they saw earlier, but this one was connected to the core through thin tendrils of metallic material. It looked like the person had been placed there deliberately, perhaps for communication, perhaps for survival. "What if they were trying to preserve someone to guide others?" Lena asked. "A messenger from the past." The idea filled the room with awe. The figure was perfectly still, preserved by the cold in the ship's internal systems. Mira wondered what story this person carried, what message they hoped to deliver across time and depth. Hours passed as they studied the chamber. Every symbol, every pulse, every flicker of light seemed meaningful. The walls of the chamber revealed more spirals, more etched patterns that matched the sonar. The ship had encoded its knowledge not just in signals, but in its very structure. As Mira zoomed the submersible in for another scan, the entire chamber shifted subtly. A panel on the far wall slid open, revealing a hidden alcove. Inside was a small device, a flat disc with glowing lines. "What is that?" Mira breathed. Dr. Kamal stared at it with wonder. "A data storage unit, maybe. Or a key." The sonar pulses changed again, sending a new pattern they had never seen before. It repeated slowly, clearly, like an explanation. Mira translated the pattern through the software, converting it into visual shapes. The sequence resembled the symbols etched on the disc. "It's telling us how to use it," she said, "or how to unlock it." They recorded everything. But as they continued scanning the chamber, the environment began to grow unstable. Tiny particles drifted in the water, shaking gently. The lights flickered again. "The ship is old," Lena warned. It may not be able to hold together if we stay too long. Oh, Harlan nodded. Pull the submersible back. We have enough for now. If we push too hard, we could damage the ship or lose the vehicle. Mira complied, guiding the submersible out of the chamber. The pulses followed them. Softer now, as if the ship were saying goodbye for the moment. When the submersible finally exited the wreck and began its ascent, something unexpected happened. The ship emitted a long, low pulse, steady, almost comforting. It's acknowledging us, Mira whispered. Back on the station, excitement filled the crew as the data was analyzed. The symbols, the core, the preserved humans, the disk, everything pointed to a civilization or group far more advanced than the world knew. And yet, their design, their structure, even the preserved bodies looked human. Did we lose a part of our history? Lena wondered aloud. Or did someone explore the deep before us in ways we never imagined? As theories filled the air, Mira studied the pulses again. One pattern kept repeating a sequence they saw in the core chamber, a shape that looked like a spiral with a line through it. This symbol feels important, she said. It appears everywhere. Dr. Kamal agreed. It might represent their purpose or identity. Night fell on the station once more, but no one felt sleepy. The ship had not only given them information, it had opened a doorway into a forgotten past. But it had also shown that it was fragile. The next visit could be dangerous. Mira felt a deep sense of responsibility. Whatever secrets the ship held, they needed to approach carefully, respectfully. The world above had forgotten many things. The deep remembered them. As she sat alone at her console, the sonar pulse came through again, soft, steady, familiar. It felt like a voice calling out across time. A whisper meant for human ears. She leaned closer. Mesmerized. The story hidden in the depths was not finished yet. And she knew that when they returned to the ship, it would reveal its true purpose. But the ocean had its own rules, and the ship had just begun to awaken. The pulse of the shipwreck had settled into a steady rhythm, no longer urgent but persistent, as if it were satisfied with the human's presence. Mira and the crew sat in tense silence, watching the monitors. For days, they had decoded patterns, traced corridors, and mapped chambers. Every discovery had been more incredible than the last, revealing a vessel built with intelligence and care that seemed almost beyond human reach. Yet even now, the ship kept some of its secrets close, its purpose only partially revealed. The submersible hovered near the heart of the wreck, lights illuminating intricate metalwork etched with symbols and diagrams. Mira leaned forward, tracing the lines with her finger on the monitor, as if she could touch the ship's mind. She had spent hours decoding the pulses into understandable sequences, each pattern forming instructions, fragments of knowledge, and glimpses into a story long forgotten. It's incredible, Lena said softly. It's like a manual, but also a history. Whoever built this wanted someone to understand their work, to continue their journey. Mira nodded, her mind racing with possibilities, and they waited. They waited for someone curious enough, careful enough, to listen. Harlan, the station commander, frowned slightly. But why here? Why wait in the depths for centuries instead of leaving it in a safer place? It's preservation, Dr. Kamal said thoughtfully. The ocean's depths are harsh, but they also protect. Sunlight, erosion, human interference. All these could destroy fragile technology or records. The builders chose the deep to survive, and they left signals, just enough for someone careful to find it. Mira leaned back in her chair. It's amazing that it can communicate at all. Sonar waves as a language, it's elegant, simple, yet effective. We just need to understand the rest. The team worked tirelessly, feeding the sequences into the station's AI and watching the system slowly recognize patterns and translate them into usable data. One by one, fragments of the ship's knowledge became clear. Advanced propulsion techniques, new materials resistant to extreme pressure, and even concepts that could improve human deep-sea exploration. The ship had preserved its intelligence, not for profit or power, but to teach and guide anyone who found it. "This is more than a discovery," Harlan said, a rare light of excitement in his voice. "It's a bridge between generations, between the past and the present. Humanity didn't build this, but now it can learn from it." As they continued decoding, the submersible's lights swept across a chamber that had remained hidden until now. A circular platform rose from the floor, glowing faintly, covered in delicate filigree that shimmered in the artificial light. Mira leaned closer. The platform seemed to respond to the submersible's presence, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the sonar signals. "It's like it's alive," she whispered. "Not alive like a person, but aware. Recognizing us. Accepting us." Lena smiled faintly. "It's amazing. We're not intruders. We're participants in something much bigger than ourselves." The team realized that the pulses now carried instructions for safely interacting with the ship. Each sequence revealed a control mechanism, a way to access compartments, and even how to retrieve preserved data without damaging the vessel. It was as if the builders had anticipated curiosity and had left a guide for those who would come after. Hours turned into a day, and the crew worked in synchrony, each person contributing their skills. Mira coordinated the translation of sonar sequences, Lena analyzed structural designs, Dr. Kamal interpreted energy patterns, and Harlan oversaw the mission, ensuring that curiosity never became recklessness. The station had become a hub of human ingenuity, alive with excitement and focus. Finally, the team accessed the central chamber. The platform responded fully to the submersible, revealing a compartment containing a preserved object that hummed faintly with stored energy. It was small but clearly significant. A device of unknown purpose, yet carefully crafted, with intricate wiring and delicate structures that hinted at advanced technology. "This could change everything," Dr. Kamal said, awe in his voice. "It's a tool, or a key. Something the builders wanted us to use." Mira studied it. "And they trusted us to understand it. To use it responsibly." Harlan nodded slowly. "That's the message here. This ship has waited for us because humanity's curiosity and care are its most important qualities. They are testing us, in a way seeing if we are worthy of their knowledge." As they examined the device, the submersible recorded every detail. The pulses from the ship shifted slightly, almost like a response, acknowledging their actions. The wreck was no longer mysterious and distant. It was a partner, a silent teacher guiding them through understanding. The crew realized that the knowledge they had gained was not just scientific. It carried lessons about patience, respect, and collaboration. The builders of the ship had left instructions for survival, but also for how to be responsible explorers. Every step they took in decoding the ship required teamwork, trust, and careful thought. By the end of the second day, the team had completed their initial survey. They had recorded every compartment, every device, and every pulse of the ship. Mira leaned back in her chair, exhausted, but exhilarated. "We've learned so much already," she said softly. "And yet, I feel like the ship still has more to teach." Lena smiled. "And we'll be ready. We've proven ourselves. We can handle whatever comes next." Suddenly, the sonar pulse changed again. It was slower now, almost like a sigh of satisfaction. The ship seemed to recognize that its teachings had been received. Mira traced the new sequence on the monitor and realized that it was a simple pattern of gratitude and closure. The vessel was content, its purpose fulfilled. "It's saying goodbye," Mira whispered, awe in her voice. "But in a way that invites us to continue. It's passing the torch to humanity." Harlan nodded, pride in his eyes. "We have been part of something extraordinary. Not just discovering technology, but connecting with the spirit of those who came before. That is what exploration is about." The team spent the next hours ensuring that every piece of data was safely recorded and transmitted back to the main station. They carefully retrieved the device, making sure not to damage the delicate mechanisms. It hummed softly, a faint echo of the ship's pulse, a reminder that knowledge preserved with care could endure even centuries of isolation. Mira looked at the ship one last time through the submersible's lights. It seemed smaller now, less mysterious, but no less magnificent. It had waited for humans, tested them, and now entrusted them with its legacy. In its silence, there was a profound lesson that humanity's drive to explore, to understand, and to act with integrity was what made them worthy of knowledge. The team returned to the station with the device secured. Cheers erupted as they realized the magnitude of their success. They had uncovered advanced technology, a preserved history, and lessons in collaboration and respect that could guide humanity for generations. The ocean outside remained vast and mysterious. But for the first time, the crew felt that they had truly connected with it. Harlan addressed the team, his voice carrying the weight of triumph and responsibility. This is a moment we will never forget. But more importantly, it is a reminder of what humans are capable of. Curiosity, intelligence, courage, and respect, these are our greatest tools. We will continue to explore, to learn, and to honor the legacy we have been given. Mira smiled as she watched the submersible's final readings. She thought of the ship, alone in the deep for centuries, waiting for someone to listen. She thought of the pulses, the messages, and the care with which everything had been preserved. And she understood that humanity had been recognized, not just as explorers, but as caretakers of knowledge. The ocean remained silent and endless outside the station, but inside, a sense of connection and purpose filled the air. The crew knew that they had not only discovered a remarkable ship but had also proven that human curiosity, ingenuity, and integrity could bridge the gap between the past and the present. They had answered the ship's long wait with patience, care, and understanding. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting its first faint light across the ocean's surface, Mira reflected on the adventure. The wreck had whispered to them through the sonar, tested their skills and patience, and ultimately entrusted them with knowledge that could change the future. It was a moment that celebrated humanity's strengths and reminded them that exploration was never just about discovery. It was about connection, respect, and the courage to seek understanding. The station hummed with quiet activity, scientists and engineers reviewing data, discussing the implications, and planning the next steps. The pulse of the shipwreck had faded, but its presence remained, a silent teacher guiding humanity's journey. Mira looked out at the endless ocean, knowing that this was only the beginning. The depths held more mysteries, more lessons, and more wonders waiting to be discovered. And somewhere far below, in the quiet darkness, the ship rested, its mission complete, its whispers answered. Humanity had listened. Humanity had learned. Humanity had proven itself worthy.